Share screen.
I'm alerting you that we are live on YouTube as we are trying this.
Can you see it?
I can't see it yet.
It's on
Just
the
a black
share.
screen.
Yeah.
Just,
I wonder
black
if it's,
screen, Marika.
where do you see a green box and is it around where you want it to be?
Yes.
Do you want to send it maybe to Anita if she's willing or something to and then you can still talk through and direct her?
Yes.
Just see if that works.
Okay,
I'll put my email in the chat.
Thanks.
I'm emailing. Okay.
I'm in now.
All right, great. Johanna, you ready with some music and we'll open it up?
I just sent it, Anita. Let me know if
Okay.
you got it.
All right. That screen share looks great. Thanks everybody as we're just trying it out. We'll be with you in a second with our hosts, Elsie and Johanna.
We also welcome people that have their name as Paul Spies to rename that box. If you go into the right-hand corner, there's 3 dots, and you can rename your video screen to your actual name. Josh Crossan might want to do that as well. So if you are not online as your own identity, please add your name and feel free to add your gender pronouns as well.
Can y'all hear me okay? Hi, everyone. I'm one of the co-hosts, Johanna. I'm from Washburn High School, and I'm here with Elsie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Elsie. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm from Washburn High School, and I'm one of the co-hosts too.
We're gonna start with grounding from. We're gonna start with a grounding from Erica and a land and labor acknowledge. So we'll pass it over to them. Does anybody know if Erica's in the meeting? Okay, cool.
Do we want to start with something else as we wait? Like,
Yeah, Elsie, do you want to start with your deep breathing? And we can just keep it going. And if
Okay.
Erica shows up, then we can do that too.
bear with me as I go through this grounding exercise to encourage us all to be on the same level and get ready to talk about a few items that could be triggering or tough for some people. And this is a good way to just release all that tension and stress from the body. Hey everyone, to begin, my name is Elsie again. Today I'll be sharing with you a technique that helps relieve tension and stress. Did you know that sometimes our body holds stress and we don't even know that it's in our body? The importance of this breathing exercise is to fill our lungs with good oxygen, which is better than that stale carbon dioxide that we breathe in and out with our short and shallow breaths. This tool helps take control of your nervous system and, most importantly, your body. In times of stress and tension, like the topics that we could be talking about today, which could be triggering in other events or in other places, this helps calm the nervous system down and your body down so you can be ready to have these tough conversations in the future. Whenever I feel so out of control in situations, I use this tool to ground myself and to get me back into a very calming state. This practice became essential in my life as I went through tough times and I got to, as a youth activist, it can be very stressful and very exhausting to have these conversations all the time. So this tool really helps me become more grounded. Now, I would like to start by placing our right hand on our belly, just below your waist. I don't know, you probably can't see me, I'm sorry. Our right hand goes on our belly, just below our waist, and your left hand upon your chest. As we inhale, we're going to say soft. As we exhale, we're going to say belly. You breathe out from your stomach, okay? We're gonna do this for about 15 to 20 seconds. And just remember that if it's stressful or if you get out of it, just remember to jump back in. Okay, we're gonna start. We're gonna start soft, belly, soft, belly, soft, belly. Keep going. Just remember, if this gets stressful or you get distracted by anything, just remember to jump back in. Let all those thoughts and all that is in your head just float away in a cloud. Soft, belly. 3 more times. Soft, belly. Soft, belly. 1 more time. Soft, belly. Take all that air out. And you can keep your eyes closed if your eyes were closed, or you can keep them open. Just notice how your body feels. Notice if you feel calm. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. Just notice how it feels. Mine feels calm and it feels centered. And I'm ready to tackle on these conversations today. I would I would advise everyone, if you ever feel stressful throughout the meeting, or if you feel um, tension, to do this soft belly exercise. It really helps your body take control. Um, and yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Now we're just gonna do a quick writing prompt for anybody that just came in to the meet. My name is Johanna. I'm co-hosting along with Elsie. I go to Washburn High School and I'm 16. And so the writing prompts we're going to be doing today are I am, I come from, and I am here because. And what we're going to do is, you can just get a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, and just start writing. And if you feel you want to put it in the chat, feel free to. We'll do a chat blast in a couple of minutes, and I'll just let y'all know when you can put it in. And yeah, so here, let me put the prompts in the chat, and we're just gonna write for like 2 minutes. And yeah. Okay, if y'all want to write what you said in the chat, or we can have a couple of people unmute and share their writing prompts. Yeah, feel free to do that if you're comfortable.
I can put an example out first if you want to look at the example. It's just something I wrote really quickly throughout. I don't know if it's in the chat or not. Can you see it? Oh, here it is. For my example is I'm Elsie. I come from low income housing and tied between, oh, sorry, there's a lot of typos there, but um, and tied between what identity to choose because I have to choose Black or Mexican when it comes to my environment and my society. I've always had to choose. So I'm here because I want change, and change is exactly what me as youth activist and Johanna want and are going to get. That's an example I put out there just.
I'm happy to share if you don't mind. I'll just do a very brief introduction. My name's Jean Erickson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm actually a support staff at South High School. Just got off our last call with the Increased Teachers of Color Act. So Johanna, thank you so much for your spoken word. It was really impactful and beautiful. So I just wanted to shine a light on you today, but I'll just be brief and not take up too much space. So I wrote, I am joy incarnate. I come from suburbia, too white to be Black, too Black to be white, twisted contradictions, limitations of my Blackness, which is infinite. I am here because I believe that Black lives matter every day, not just when we are murdered, but when we actualize, meditate, commune, and inspire, always aiming higher, because we've got to make our ancestors proud. So that's what I wrote today, but very happy to be in space with you all today. And thank you for having us and creating this space and for your work.
Thank you for that. Snaps.
So much. That was beautiful. I want to open up the space for one more youth to unmic and share because we got to move on pretty soon here. So if someone else wants to share, a youth. I see y'all in the chat and it's really beautiful. Just wanted to say that. Okay, if nobody else wants to share, we will move on to the ethnic studies bill. Are y'all ready to dive into that and to share with people about what all that's about?
Yeah, Brian, are you here?
I'm here. Teachers of color isn't going first?
Yeah, isn't Teachers of Color Act coming first, Johanna?
No, we switched it around to the ethnic studies bill. Is that cool with y'all?
Good.
If not, we can definitely.
I'm
It's
ready.
all
I
good.
should clarify that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So again, I'm Elsie, one of the hosts, and I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about my story and what ethnic studies means to me and share a little piece that I wrote. And then after that, I'll pass it on to Brian. But my story is ethnic studies has been influential to not only me, but a lot of teens in this generation. It has been a reference on how we grew up and out of the stereotypes, the discrimination, and not making the mistakes of repeating history again. I'm thankful for ethnic studies because I learned about who I come from when it comes to my identity and culture as an Afro-Mexican woman in society. I would never want to see the young people of this generation or the next not know who or where they come from, especially for Black and brown bodies. I would like to share a short poem. Me and my co-host collaborated on a few months back for the Star Tribune's competition, where we entered to fight to change laws that have to do with the Minneapolis Police Department and social justice items for Minnesota. This is my part of the piece. So it starts, we surrender to an education system that is coded so that we automatically feel powerless to succeed, and a lack of ethnic studies classes and discouraging history learning from a white man's perspective. I will fall under untouched pencils with the lead filled with the motivation I don't have. Let's change the system and the rules. I want to reconnect with my ancestors that fought their generational trauma for me to be here along with our faith. I don't want to feel delusional for thinking that the borders I was born with will soon fall down. The colored voices are kept inside the fences while the victory is seen from the white man's perspective on textbook. They make a mural out of our people's blood. They do not keep our name intact. The author thought it was their canvas to paint. You held my voice and held it captive. Not anymore. The fermented bones quickly being surrounded by blood. That Black man died with poison, so poison is what they breathe, is what we breathe. No more poison, no more. The author thought they should feed the story for more generations to wonder if they are valued with pride for their culture and makes them wonder who's bending the truth. We must heal. And a few things, thank you. And a few things that I want to say at the end is like, I refuse to learn my culture, to learn about my people through textbooks written by authors that are white authors and their ancestors who have been a part of oppressing us and my ancestors. And that's something that I always keep near and dear to me, is that I don't want to learn about my people from a white man teaching me. It's always been a thing that I never want. And the system of policing was built off of the concept of slavery and was institutionalized as another way to oppress people of color. It is impossible to reform a system when the system is not broken. That is what Johanna said. And I just want to reiterate that last part, because it is impossible to reform a system when the system is not broken. So something that I want to say is we just now realize our education system is unjust and oppressed in this generation for our Black and brown students. But a question I want the audience to linger on is, what if our education system is not broken? What if it's doing exactly what it's supposed to? I'll pass it on to Brian to talk more about ethnic studies. Thank you.
Okay, Elsie, I see you. You always got me following up on fire people, man. That's what's up. So yeah, my name is Brian Lazinski. I'm with Education for Liberation Minnesota, and we're also part of the Minnesota Ethnic Studies Coalition. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work that's coming out of the coalition. But first, just to situate again, I think following up, Elsie did an amazing job explaining the importance of this and the urgency, right? Like this, we're basically refusing to graduate another student from Minnesota schools who doesn't have an understanding of plurality in the world, who doesn't have an understanding that whiteness is not humanness. And that's literally the expectation that's being put in front of us. To be successful in Minnesota's education system, you literally have to be ignorant. All right, and we're trying to flip that frame. All right, and so we're fighting this struggle. It's an ongoing struggle that people have been fighting for centuries. It's really, as we talk about ethnic studies, the modern movement starting back in the late 1960s, out of the civil rights era, with the student blowouts in California, with the student protests in Philadelphia, walking out of school saying, what are we learning here? What are you all teaching us? Right? This is 50 years ago. And so every person that walks into a school today who is not putting forward an ethnic studies perspective should literally be ashamed of themselves on a daily basis, and honestly should probably just quit. And so we want that to be the mentality going forward, that if you're not coming into our school buildings, if you're not coming into our communities, then emphasis on the humanity, the histories, the knowledge systems, the deep knowledge systems that are going to perpetuate humanity, right? Because we see it falling down around. We see what white supremacy does. All right, if y'all just turn on the news and you look, that's white supremacy. Okay, COVID, fires, right? Insurrection, all that, right? That's all white supremacy. So if we want to create another world, this is the work that's being done. So really quickly, in terms of the Ethnic Studies Coalition, what we're trying to do is put forth just some baselines, right? Just some baseline agreements that we will no longer graduate ignorant folks. And I'm not saying ignorant to put that on. I'm saying like we're all ignorant, right? We are all ignorant to the extent that we're not engaged in this process. And so the young people on this call and the young people are way more knowledgeable than a lot of the teachers, honestly, right? And that's the tragedy of all of this. And so what we're trying to do is put forth a baseline, just an expectation that you can no longer say you're a graduate of Minnesota schools without having this fundamental understanding. Some of the important things coming forth in the bill, and if somebody wants to put a link, sorry, I should have prepped that, a link to the bill language in the chat, that would be really appreciated. But one of the important things is having a graduation requirement of 3.5 credits in ethnic studies classes. That could be, you know, African-American history classes, Latinx literature classes, Ojibwe language classes, right? Thinking about ways that, that we can embed ethnic studies across not just the social studies, but beyond. But for now, we're starting in the area of social studies. A requirement for Minnesota public schools to offer ethnic studies courses to meet social studies graduation requirements. So that you should be able to take, one, ethnic studies should be embedded in how we think about US history or civics, all of that. But additionally, you should also have to have taken, you know, a Pan-Asian studies course, right? To be able to kind of understand these aspects of race, identity, how populations got here, all of these other kinds of things, right? We don't trust the structure to be able to do this. So another important part of the bill is to create a task force to be able to have oversight, because we know what we're dealing with. We know what the system's already created. And so we know that we need an oversight committee to be able to enforce this work. This also aligns with the development of statewide ethnic studies state standards in the social studies. And we've got folks working right now on the social studies state standards revision committee to make ethnic studies a fifth strand of social studies education, along with embedding it across all of the other. So whether it's history, geography, civics, all of those things should have ethnic studies embedded in them. In addition, ethnic studies should be its own standalone. So it's like a both and approach to getting ethnic studies embedded. And then finally, the last really important thing is to not ignore elementary school, right? To create a timeline for elementary and middle schools to include ethnic studies courses beginning later, but again, not waiting, not miseducating young people until they get to high school and then say, oh, now we're gonna educate y'all, right? So this is a process that needs to start pre-K and go all the way through high school, higher ed, everything. So we have, and so that's my time. And I'm gonna kick it back to our amazing moderators. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much. That was great. Angelica and I are gonna dive into the ethnic studies bill, or not the ethnic studies bill, I'm so sorry. The Increased Teachers of Color Act, and kind of go over that.
My screen on. Here it goes. All right, you guys can see it. All right, so yes, Johanna and I and Dr. Spies just came back from a hearing with the Educational Finance Committee. So let's see here, to provide our testimony on to support Increased Teachers of Color Act. And so first, hold on now, let me see if I can get this out. Let me present, sorry you guys. All right, so in the state of Minnesota, students are at 38% students of color. However, teachers of color are only at 7%. Okay, so that's about a 30% gap. However, there's many school districts in the Twin Cities and greater Minnesota with majority students of color, Indigenous students, that have such a wider gap. As an example, I am an ESL teacher at South High School in Minneapolis Public Schools. And we have 17% teachers of color, so higher, but our students of color are at 65% students of color. So that is about a 50% gap. So there is definitely a need to make sure the percentage of teachers of color also match our student population.
Can y'all hear me okay? Yep, okay, cool. So part of increasing teachers of color is also having ethnic studies, what Brian and Elsie were just talking about, having that be a part of our everyday curriculum, and not just having like an ethnic studies class, but also having it be embedded into our curriculum, so that in your history class or your social studies class, along with learning things that we usually learn, which is white people, also learning about our ancestors, about people of color. And I know this is, for me, this is really important because, I mean, for my whole life, my schooling has been all about white people up until like 9th and 10th grade, when I went into an ethnic studies class and I got to learn about my people. I got to learn about Native people. I got to learn about Latino people and Asian people and their culture and their histories. And yeah. And increasing the number of college scholarships and loan forgiveness opportunities for teachers of color and American Indian teachers. There are a lot of barriers that prevent teachers, especially teachers of color, from actually getting into a classroom. And so this would be part of breaking down that barrier.
All right, so in the bill, there is language there to expand, grow your own program pathways. There's a secondary level, and then there's also, just your regular grow your own program. So what that is we are trying to get it so more, say your associate educators. I work with a lot of bilingual educators, for example, in my ESL classrooms, to really get them in the pathway to get their bachelor degree and also their teaching license. A lot of these programs that grow your own currently, you have to have a bachelor's degree to even get into a grow your own program. So imagine the disproportionality of who's actually benefiting from the current program. So we definitely need the financial support for our non-licensed staff in the school to get their teaching license. There's also another grow your own program that we want to expand, which is the secondary level. So if you're in high school right now, okay? So as an example, at South High School, we just had a partnership with Minneapolis College, which will start next year, and they'll take Intro to Urban Education course and Approaches to Multicultural Education, and that counts for high school credit and college credit, and it'll bring them to a path for licensure. And when they actually do the 4 courses, it'll culminate into 4 courses. They have a preference for Minneapolis, hiring preference for Minneapolis public school jobs. So just imagine you're 11th grade, you take the 4 classes, you graduate, you can be an avid tutor. You could be a special ed assistant, a bilingual educator, and get those scholarships that Johanna just said. So then you can pursue your bachelor's degrees and also your teaching license. Also, in the bill, we want to require school districts to address institutional racism within their school policies and structures. So we want the school districts to be held accountable, okay, with these policies. As an example, last in, first out. If we're trying to get more teachers of color, right, in the profession, who's going to be usually the first in, right? Or the last in, sorry. So then when there's budget cuts, the first ones that are going to be out are our BIPOC educators. So we need to change those policies. Also, policies turn into practices, into school culture, right? So how do we change that? And how do we make school districts accountable to not having these like hostile work environments, right? Which in turn pushes us out of the profession. So really what this gets into is teacher mentoring and retention. And those two are super important to make sure we have. Lastly, in the bill, we want to ensure that school learning and work environments validate, affirm, and integrate cultural and community strengths of all students, families, and also employees. So going back to that mentoring and retention piece, however, this also goes to, I want to share, South High School had a walkout about a year ago before the pandemic, okay? And the students had demands. One of the many demands that they had was getting more teachers of color that look like them, okay? And also they had asked for ethnic studies. Hannah already had mentioned, but just all the classes to be culturally relevant, anti-racist, right? Classes, they'll validate them, which will in turn have a work environment and a school environment that's more welcoming and really integrating their cultural and community strengths, not this whole deficit way of looking at our BIPOC students.
So ways that youth right now can take action for this bill is there's right now the Increased Teachers of Color Act, their coalition, they're having a competition for who can raise the most awareness and advocate for this bill to be passed. That's me right there in that video. And yeah, if y'all want more information on that, you can contact Paul. There's also links that you can click on to sign up, like you can sign up right there. And yeah, there are awards up to $1,000. And that's pretty much it.
Yes, and this afternoon, February 3rd, TOCO-IE, which stands for Teachers of Color and American Indian Teachers, the coalition will be holding a Q&A session at 4:30 if you want to know more details about that. And it's really exciting, you guys. There's 31 youth prizes, and any race or any ethnicity of youth can participate, because as we know, teachers of color benefit not only students of color, but white students as well, okay? And so there's 31 prizes, anywhere from $500 to $1,000. So please participate in that. But also parents of color, I am talking to you guys. There are 5 parent awards as well. Now for the parents, you have to be a parent of color, okay? But 5 parent awards up to $1,000. So if you want to know the nitty-gritty details of that, please go to this link. I'll drop it in the chat this afternoon at 4:30. Okay, and so we do have a website. I'm not going to go through all of this, but please make sure you leave voicemail to support the Increased Teachers of Color Act. There's a website that kind of shows you who represents you. So I can also drop that in the chat, or anyone that's involved here, you could drop it in the chat as well. But you can also record a short video testimony. We have a Flipgrid that you can record, but also we encourage you to persuade at least 3 of your friends in your network to advocate for this. And all of this ways that you can get involved counts for the social media competition. So it's just for you to track, like, oh yeah, I posted on my Facebook about Increased Teachers of Color Act and 5 people responded. Or I wrote a letter to my representative, and then you just track that, okay? So just last, I want to bring you then to this. It's just the TOCO-IE, and then if you go to legislation, make your voice heard, there's all of these sample messages, and you could email them and all of that. All right, and that is all. Thank you.
Now we're going to pass it to the Student Inclusion and Engagement Act. Marika and Josh are going to be presenting that to y'all. Also, I see people's questions. I know we probably all have a lot of questions, and this is a lot of information in one thing, but please write your questions down. We're going to have a 30-minute talk back in breakout rooms to answer your questions, to talk more about this, because this is a lot to process. So write those questions down, and we'll have some time at the end to kind of go through that if people are able to stay from 1 to 1:30. And I'll pass it to Marika and Josh.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Josh and I are going to do this presentation, and Anita is going to help us with advancing the slides. So if you will, next slide, please. There you go. Hello, everyone. My name is Marika Pfefferkorn, and I am the Executive Director of the Midwest Center for School Transformation. And my partner and colleague, Josh Crossan, is the Executive Director of Ed Allies. And we are both what I would call legacy members of the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition. And that just means that we have been at this since at least 2014. So you are in capable hands as we do an overview of the legislation that we've been trying to pass at the state level. So if you will do the next slide, please. So you may ask yourself, who are these people and what is the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition? So we are a band of people, students, families, community members, and organizations who are committed to changing policies, practices, and mindsets in order to end racial disparities in discipline and foster positive school climates for all. So really what we are talking about is changing the climate and conditions in schools in order for young people to thrive, parents to engage, and educators to also be connected to the learning that is happening, to eliminate the school to prison pipeline. And so we've been around doing this work. We meet, we connect with youth and parents and talk about what are those issues that are pressing and we need to address. And through that process, we were able to come up with a number of priorities. And so I'm actually going to pass you off to Josh Crossan, who is going to share more specifically, what are those policies that we're talking about? What is the Student Inclusion and Engagement Act that we've been trying to pass down at the state legislature? So Josh, and you can go to the next slide, Anita.
Yeah, thanks, Marika. This is really helpful. So just to kind of give this the problem a little bit more context, Minnesota is a huge outlier when it comes to how often we suspend and expel Black students, Indigenous students, and students with disabilities. One stat that I like to throw out before kind of going into the solutions is nationwide, Black students are about 3 times more likely than white students to be suspended and expelled. In Minnesota, that's double. That's about 6 times more likely. Some reports have us at 8 times more likely. Native American students are about 5 times more likely nationwide. In Minnesota, that number is closer to 10 times more likely. Where only 15% of our students have disabilities. In Minnesota, 50% of all suspensions and expulsions, 50% of all suspensions and expulsions are conducted on kids with disabilities. So this is a huge disparity in how we treat students, which students that we identify as being disposable and not worthy of an education. And frankly, it just comes down to the policies that we've set up in schools and the implicit and explicit bias that our school leaders and educators have exhibited on students of color and students with disabilities. So one thing that we've looked at is the laws around dismissals, which are pretty weak. The last time that we've updated these laws were in the 70s, and I can tell you that since the 70s, they've only taken away rights from students and families. It's now easier to suspend and expel a student. It's now easier to create these harmful discipline practices. And so what we're trying to do with the Student Inclusion Engagement Act, which was a policy that parents and students came together. I've never written a policy. I've been working in policy space for a really long time. I've never written a policy with like 40 other people, just going line by line and saying like, how does this impact us? How does this impact our kids? And change line by line our dismissal practices and policies. So this is that. The Student Inclusion Engagement Act is absolutely kind of our, if we got everything that we wanted in how we change dismissal practices, more transparency, limits on when to suspend and expel, to kind of put that in perspective, Native American students, the #1 reason why Native American students are suspended and expelled in schools is because of attendance related issues. In other words, we're suspending and expelling Native American students mostly because they're missing too much school. How much sense does that make? So in the Student Inclusion Engagement Act, we say you can't suspend and expel for truancy issues. And so this is kind of like our all-encompassing bill that we've been working on to make sure that we pass through the process. I think is there a next slide on policy?
Next slide, yes.
Cool. Oh, perfect. So we were super successful last year. We haven't been successful in passing the Student Inclusion Engagement Act, even though it's kind of been proposed for I think the last 5 years. But we were super successful last year to put a ban on suspensions of pre-K students. I tell this to people and I love to see their faces. Pre-K students are 3 times more likely to be suspended and expelled than K-12 students. So our 3 and 4-year-olds are being suspended and expelled at higher rates than K-12 students. So we put a ban on suspending 3 and 4-year-olds last year, and now we're hoping to expand that ban to include pre-K through 4th grade. People children's psychologists, scientists, educators will tell you that kids under 4th grade are still trying to learn how to be kids. They're still trying to figure out their boundaries. They're still trying to figure out what's right and wrong. During this process, we shouldn't be kicking out Black, Native, and kids with disabilities just because of their normal development. So we're hoping to create space for pre-K through 4th graders to be kids without being suspended and expelled in the process. The other big issue that we're really focusing on is a parent complaint center. If you get expelled from school, you have the ability to have a trial and hear both sides of the story. We know that there aren't a lot of expulsions, but there are a lot of suspensions and classroom removals. I usually like to raise my hand, everyone raise their hand to see if they've been suspended or expelled. I am one of those people, and it's mostly people of color who are raising their hands, right? And we know sometimes the schools are not doing the right thing. They're not informing parents. They're not listening to both sides of the story. And there's absolutely no way for parents to complain to the state if a suspension or classroom removal is done improperly. So what we're fighting for is at the Department of Education, a center for parents and students to go to say, hey, I've been removed out of the class every single day this week, and I don't think it's proper. Or, hey, I was suspended and I don't think I should have been suspended, and here's why. Just so that the Department of Education can investigate those schools that are improperly suspending students and removing students from class. The #1 opposition we've gotten from on this bill is, we know, this is from the Department of Education, we know this problem is so large that it's going to be too expensive to investigate all of the bad actors out there in Minnesota. So we're just not going to do it because it's too big of a problem. That's the opposition we're getting from this parent complaint center. So thank you. So we're going to just be working to make sure that this parent complaint center is developed for students and families to be able to air their grievance.
And to just piggyback a little bit, Josh, I just want to remind people that it was December of 2017, 2018, January, where 43 school districts were identified for discriminating in out-of-school suspensions towards Black, Brown, and Indigenous students. So this is not just something that it's not an abstract thing. We know that this is happening, and parents are really struggling to get any kind of solution out there where they can address this. So thank you, Josh. Yeah. I'm just going to elevate one more thing, because I think this is the Black Lives Matter week of action. And since so much has been going on in Minnesota, we have had the murder of George Floyd, we've had the subsequent uprising, we've had schools that have organized to remove police from schools. So I just also want to take a moment to acknowledge that we had a really nasty incident that came out of Osceola, Florida, where a young Black girl in high school was slammed down onto the cement and became unconscious through the practice of her SRO in school. And so wanted to take a moment to stand in solidarity with the young people across the country who have been impacted by school resource officer assaults, and to also highlight that we do have this as a part of our Student Inclusion and Engagement Act. And it doesn't go as far as many of the things that we need to do, but at minimum, we're talking about how do we end policing in school and have police-free schools. And so fundamentally, we need to follow the lead of some Minnesota districts and take a new direction away from police in schools. And that at minimum, if you are going to have police in school, there needs to be a contract, a memorandum of understanding, and a way to provide oversight to what's happening, because right now it's so piecemeal. It really is difficult to capture all that is happening. So I also ask you, I have a hashtag at the bottom here. There's youth and parents and community members all over the country that have been standing in solidarity with the students in at Liberty. And so hashtag we stand with Liberty, hashtag police free schools, and hashtag assault at Liberty if you want more information on what has happened. If you will, for the next slide, please, Anita. So we came here today to share some ideas about how to get engaged at the legislative level, what's happening, what we're pushing forward in collaboration with the Teachers of Color and Indigenous Teachers work and the ethnic studies. And again, all of this work is really about improving the conditions, the climate of our learning spaces. And so for you to get involved with the work that we're doing around ending the school to prison pipeline and making better policies around suspensions in Minnesota, just like the other folks said, we need you to testify and tell your story. So whether it's a young person, an educator, a parent, what has your lived experience been that really supports why we need to focus and really dig deep and get these policies passed in Minnesota? So if you're interested in testifying and telling your story, on the screen, you can see solutionsnotsuspensions@gmail.com. Send us a message. We invite you to contact your state legislator and ask them what they're doing about this and where they stand on this position. We've been doing this for 5 years, and there isn't a legislator out there that should not know or hold a position about this. And then finally, we invite you to continue on this journey with us to make sure that schools are a safe place for young people to learn. And so attend our coalition meeting.
One thing I'll add, it's not on here, solutionsnotsuspensions.org. That is our coalition's website. On that website, you can sign up for newsletters, action alerts, opportunities to share your stories. We would love for everybody and everybody to join us and help us shape this movement. Yeah. So thank you so much for letting us take the space to talk about this issue.
And we're done.
Thank you so much, guys. That was awesome. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Brian and Elsie and Angelica and Marika and Josh. Y'all were all awesome. Now we're gonna kind of wrap up for our official closing, which is at 1, but we do have a talk back from 1 to 1:30 for questions and comments and just to like have a conversation about this, because we just talked at you for like a whole hour. So we have some closing prompts from Elsie.
Hi, everybody. So I'll put them in the chat, but just to say them out loud, our closing statements will be from, we could do, what have you learned? What do you hope to take with you? Or how do you feel? Whichever one is the best. I'll put them in the chat too. Those are the questions, and we'll give you a few minutes to answer. And then if a few people want to say theirs out loud, or if everyone wants to put them in the chat, however you're comfortable with.
One to 2 minutes.
I just want to take, oh, sorry. Sorry. I, does anyone want to say theirs out loud, or does anybody have anything that they want to answer to from the questions? And how do you feel out loud if you want? Okay. I guess we move on to the Q&A now. Johanna?
Yeah, I think we're going into breakout rooms. Could we get a little support from the other co-hosts on how to do that?
Yeah, I can set that up, but we've got now about 40 people still remaining with us. So
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll
we'll take the lead on if you want it. Say how many people you'd like in a room, and we'll do it if you still want to go that route.
Yeah,
We now have 30. Now I have 28 people.
Yeah, we can wait like a minute or two for people that want to stay for a talk back or a Q&A or have other questions. But it looks like people are kind of heading out, so I'm not sure.
Might be best just to stay all together.
We have 24, 22. Okay.
While we wait to transition, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Johanna and Elsie, for your youth leadership. It's very impressive. I only wish I could have been as outspoken and as talented as you two are when I was your age. So always a pleasure to be in leadership spaces with my fellow BIPOC staff and some of the faces I've been seeing for the last few weeks. But oh, it's so refreshing to see some younger people in the work. So I'm feeling very hopeful, a little bit less alone in this work. So thank you so much for your hard work. It does not go unnoticed.
I think we're at a stable 21. Yes. Stable 20, 21. So what, co-host, what would you like breakout rooms, or do you think this is small enough where we could all stay in here?
I think this is dope. We can just go ahead if there's people that have questions or comments or want to just talk.